Welcome into this edition of Pinpoint Weather University. I am meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Normally I've got a tie on, I've got a little bit of a dress shirt on for our shows, but a little casual today. Just got back from speaking with Rocky River Elementary School over in Concord, my old elementary school. I went there from kindergarten to second grade, got to speak with the kids there. We talked about some rain gauges, we talked about thermometers, talked about cold fronts, and just how we forecast the weather as meteorologists. Always fun getting back to that school. Also, just last Friday, I want to give a shout out to my alma mater, UNC Charlotte. I went there on Friday, had a career fair, and I got to speak with a lot of meteorologists there. It was a lot of fun chatting with them, some of the aspiring meteorologists that we have coming up here, and we'll be chatting with them more in the future, especially as some of them get older. I think some of them are going to be job shadowing here over the next few months. So it's going to be good to have them in and just helping them out as they continue to try and push towards that big meteorology career. So shout out to my 49ers. Just want to give them a shout out. We have a special guest on the show today. Before we get to our special guest, we have been dry here lately. I was talking about the rain gauges at Rocky River Elementary School earlier, and I was like, man, I bet some of your rain gauges have cobwebs in them. Maybe they're spider webs and stuff filling in because we haven't been feeling a lot of rain with those rain gauges lately. It has been very dry. This is a look at the last 3 months across the area. We're talking about dry conditions. Only 1.5 inches of rain in January here in Charlotte, about 2 inches in December. And then November, we couldn't even get a 1/2 inch of rain during the entire month in November of last year. So over the last 3 months, we're about 6.5 inches below where we should be, which is very significant for the area. And that's where we bring in our expert. We got Klaus Burton. He is with the North Carolina Drought Management Advisory Council. And Klaus, this has been a drought that has been in the making, and it's been in the making over the last several months. How significant would you classify the drought so far?
Yeah, it really, has been going on for quite a few months now. Your statistics there showed November through January, and it really started back in August when we missed out on any hurricanes and tropical storms. So since August, we've been pretty consistently dropping below normal. Yeah, that graph shows, December was our wet month this time with 1.8 inches, but typically this time of year we'd be seeing 3.5 to 4 inches per month. So again, since August we've been falling below that 3.5, 4 inches, and pretty consistently and pretty significantly. There's a lot of places in the state that are about 10 to 12 inches below normal for that 6-month period. So last 3 months haven't been good, but the last 6 months really haven't been good.
And when you take into account the drought conditions, what do you guys do with the advisory council? What are the expectations from that program during drought-like conditions like this?
Yeah, so the Drought Council started back in 2002 after that drought record, and then kind of got refined after the 2007-2008 drought to really pull in kind of the different major stakeholders and scientists that have input and understanding of drought conditions. So it's made up of folks like USGS, the State Climate Office, the Weather Service, folks from Army Corps of Engineers, Tennessee Valley Authority, Duke Power. Again, all these major agencies that have input are monitoring drought conditions and also would be impacted. Like another agency is a Department of Ag. Obviously they're going to have a lot of interest in rainfall and what's happening.
And then all those programs, you mentioned the United States Geological Survey, and they release a drought monitor every Thursday. And this is a look at what that drought monitor looks like right now. So a level 3 out of 5 drought, the severe category for the drought, covering up much of the Carolinas, including much of us here in the Queen City News viewing area. When these are released from the United States Geological Survey, what all are they accounting in this?
Yeah, so the drought monitor, again, so the Drought Management Council that I chair we meet every week and we talk about stream flow, reservoir levels. We get reports from ag extension. The different reservoir operators report what their reservoir levels are at. The climate office provides a lot of those statistics like you were showing. How do things look compared to, history over the last 3 months, last 6 months. And so there's a lot of different factors that we look at to really assess, how bad things are.
And then we had a good amount of snow here in the Carolinas, especially towards Charlotte, a couple weekends ago. And a lot of questions we were getting as meteorologists is, look at all the snow melt. It's saturating at least the topsoil. But is it really helping us with the drought? And I'll lead you with that question. I know I've been telling folks it's not a big help, but how much does snow really actually help when it comes down to drought-like conditions like this?
Yeah. Again, so, kind of our rule of thumb is an inch of rain or 4 inches of rain per month. And so you look at the snow, and it was a really nice, powdery, dry snow this time. And so if you kind of, would go out and grab that, depth of snow that you had and let it melt, it probably would come out to about 3/4 of an inch to an inch of water equivalent. Um, the ratios were somewhere between 16-1 snow to water to, even 20-1 snow to water. So again, really light, powdery snow with not a lot of water content. So for Charlotte, it probably got close to what the typical rain or water amount would be for that week. Uh, Definitely didn't bring us out of drought, but it did help. Any bit helps, and probably helped things stay steady for that week for Charlotte.
Yeah, I was gonna say we were talking about those snow ratios a lot, and it's not very common here in the Carolinas where we get a very powdery snow like this. Usually, it's like a very wet and heavy snow, and that powdery snow is leading to some pretty insane ratios. I think I was doing the math here in Charlotte. I think our ratio ended up at about 22-1, so you're like right there with it, like the 20-1, because we saw about a half an inch of liquid equivalent, and we saw 11 inches of snow here in Charlotte. So definitely some big time ratios here. And I know you got up towards Raleigh, not as much snow there, but obviously the Carolinas, we need rain now. Do you think the rain coming up for Valentine's Day weekend will be a big help, or will at least help dent a little bit of the drought?
The early forecast we're looking at, up to 2 inches. I think it's really changed over the last couple of days. We'll probably, we may get about an inch of rain statewide. And so again, that's kind of what our average is. So it's gonna help us stay where we're at, I would guess. Maybe a slight improvement, but it's not going to change the uh, overall drought conditions.
And during the winter months, we're looking at that inch, maybe up to 2 inches. Obviously, it won't hurt to have that rain. It'll keep us, at least consistent. We won't be getting worse. But what are some of the more bigger concerns with the drought during the winter months? Because many folks are looking around, everything's kind of already dead anyway with the grass, the vegetation. We don't use as much water in the winter as well as we would be using during the summer. But what are some of the bigger concerns you guys have there at the advisory council when it comes down to a drought like this big in the winter season?
Right. Yeah, you're right. Because it's wintertime, the impacts have been pretty minor. Uh, there's some pastures and winter agriculture that is hurting, but in general, impacts have been pretty minor. There's not too much agriculture in the ground right now. We've got some pastures and some winter grains that are going to be impacted, but overall impacts are pretty small. We're seeing low stream flows and lower than normal reservoir levels. Recreation, municipal water use are all low right now. So seeing this kind of deficit in the wintertime is not that bad. If we had it any other time of the year, you really would have been hearing a lot about the drought by now.
I was going to say, what happens if this drought continues into the spring? We don't get a significant amount of rain to enter the winter season. What kind of threats will we be tracking more so towards the spring season?
Yeah. No, that's kind of the big concern. Again, we're seeing reservoir levels that are, a couple feet below normal. Uh, the operators have already been really being pretty conservative about how much water is released. But then come spring, summer, the demand is going to be really picking up. And so it's going to be a challenge to keep water levels up. Stream flow is already, I was taking a look at some of the statistics. I think 16% of the USGS stream gauges in the state are at their lowest on record for this time of year. And almost 90% are in that kind of bottom 25th percentile of flows. So really, there's a lot of recharge that should be happening during the wintertime that isn't happening. Stream flow should be up, reservoirs should be at their targets. Obviously, soil and planning is going to be impacted because you've got really dry soils and not a significant amount of kind of shallow groundwater to help out when plants and agriculture starts picking up, pretty soon.
Klaus Burton with the North Carolina Drought Management Advisory Council, chair of the advisory council there. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
We got more coming up here after the break, including your Daytona 500 forecast. Could the Great American Race be racing the rain again? We'll detail that. Coming up here in just a bit on Pinpoint Weather University. Welcome back in. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson here on Pinpoint Weather University. Just want to thank Klaus Albertin again with the North Carolina Drought Management Advisory Council for coming on the show with us, talking about the drought conditions we're continuing to experience here in the Carolinas. And again, when you look at the Queen City News viewing area, just kind of summing up what we just discussed, we have seen some rain, but far from enough over the last several months. Klaus was mentioning how we're behind by about 6 months. These drought-like conditions really started in the month of August because we didn't see a lot of tropical moisture from any tropical systems. And then you put on top of the drier parts of the year on top of that during the winter months, and obviously you're going to get drier than normal conditions. So severe drought continues over the Queen City News viewing area with some moderate drought, level 2 out of 5 drought towards the foothills, but I do expect the drought to continue to fill in here. So it has been 107 days, just 3.5 months now since Charlotte has actually seen 1 inch or higher of rain in one day. October 27th was the last time we had a day of over 1 inch of rain. Yeah, 3.5 months ago. You got to go back to late last year. And as we go into the weekend for Valentine's Day weekend, there is some promising rain on the way. It does like we could get 1 inch of rain at least, if not up to 2 inches of rain in some areas. But Klaus made a good point. Is that really going to help us much? It might keep us where we are. It might keep us consistent in regards to the drought-like conditions. But unfortunately, it's not going to eliminate the drought. We need months worth of rain. Now, we obviously don't want too much rain in one day because then you get the flooding concerns. But we do need a good amount of rain to really get rid of this drought. Matter of fact, you look at the last 3 months. I was showing this in the last segment here, and you look at it, January 2026, this last month, 1.5 inches of rain. Our big rain month was December of 2025, and we only received about 1.8 inches of rainfall. So unfortunately, we were still about 1.5 inches or so below average that month. And then November, man, brutally dry conditions then. Only 0.5 inch of rain, not even that. So over those last 3 months, we're 6.5 inches in the hole when it comes down to rainfall. And then when you look at the other aspect of it and you go all the way back to August, looking back towards those 6 months ago, that drought and that hole continues to get bigger. That's something we'll have to curve here. The biggest threat that I think of when you're talking about drought-like conditions during the winter would be wildfires. Wildfires obviously start when you have dry vegetation, but also when we start getting some warmer temperatures, windier days, drier air. Fire starts with a spark, and then eventually those winds can spread the fire over some of that drier vegetation and drier soils. So the strong winds really could spread some wildfires here as we get over the next couple of months, especially as temperatures warm up and as winds increase over the area. But some things to keep in mind. Kloss made some great points. Might want to start thinking about how you would conserve water this spring if we have to, how you want to keep up with the garden this spring where you're probably going to have drier than usual soil. And then other things to think about, how in the world are we going to get rain here? And I think it's probably going to be at least another few months before we get a significant amount of rain, because looking over the next week or two, it doesn't like a significant amount of rain's on the way. Beneficial rain for sure, but we need a significant amount of rain to curb the drought. So just some things to think about here over the next several months as we get closer to the spring season, and how you want to handle things with your garden, or how you might conserve water if we have to do that as well. But we do have more to talk about here on Queen City News Plus, including the Daytona 500 forecast. The Daytona 500 has had a lot of rain here over the last several years. It's a great American race. It gets me hyped, man. This is my week. I'm a big NASCAR fan. I've never been to the Daytona 500. I'm jealous of our Carolina Sports Live crew that continues to go down there every year. I just wish I could just grab them and hang on to them and get down there with them. But unfortunately, it looks like they might be dancing in the rain again this Sunday. We're going to talk about this forecast and what you can expect and why I think the race will get the green flag on time. Details on that coming up next here on Pinpoint Weather University. Welcome back into Pinpoint Weather University. I am meteorologist Brandon Lawson. Daytona rain problems. That is the story that we're chatting about now. The Great American Race is this week. It's an exciting time for NASCAR fans all around the world, or even non-NASCAR fans, because you have a lot of celebrities and an incredible amount of celebrities that come out to this race. It's essentially NASCAR's Super Bowl. But again, I don't like comparing NASCAR to other sports. I think it is the worst thing to do for our sport here in NASCAR. So super excited for another Daytona 500 as a Chase Elliott fan. I'm hoping he can get his first Great American Race victory. We'll see what happens as we get closer to the weekend. Now, unfortunately, rain could be a problem again this year. And I'm thinking that it's mainly going to be a concern as we start to close out the race. So when you look at the details here, I think the race likely starts on time. Not too concerned about that. Now, there will be a few isolated storms out ahead of a cold front approaching that maybe could delay things, but I'd be more worried about later in the race. It's going to be kind of a race to the rain here. We're going to be racing the rain. We've got a cold front approaching from the west, very fast moving cold front on Sunday that's going to be approaching Daytona Beach. Now, that looks like it's going to get in later in the day. However, when does this race finish? It doesn't start until 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and the rain likely gets there at least by 6, maybe a little later than that. So can we finish the race under green flag conditions, or does the rain in the race for us? That's something we'll have to monitor here over the next several days. Now, the Daytona 500 forecast, you got your qualifying on Wednesday night. Things looking good for it. Thursday, you'll have your duels set the field for the Great American Race. I think things are going to be fine Thursday night for that. And really Friday, Saturday, the weather's gorgeous. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series on Saturday, the ARCA race, that's a big day for motorsports. Also Friday, you got the Truck Series racing Friday night. I think the forecast will be okay there. Now, you look at those percentages of racing, 95 to 100% of racing, chance of racing. They're going to race those races and have no issues likely. Maybe a delay Friday night with some showers around, but even then, I think they get the race in that night with the Truck Series. Sunday, like what happens to the percentage? I'm bringing it down to 70% chance of racing. So I do think the race starts. Again, I think they get at least a part of the race in before rain approaches. I'm going to show you two different models here and just compare them to one another. So the American model on the left and the in-house model is on the right. The American model and in-house model agree that at 2 o'clock on Sunday, the rain is still going to be pretty far northwest of Daytona Beach. Now, during this time of year, we tend to see cold fronts outrace the model data. So, although the cold front's pretty far northwest, I wouldn't be shocked if that front is more so towards Gainesville and Jacksonville versus back to the west as you're getting towards Dothan and also towards Tallahassee. I think that front's probably going to be further east. So that's something else you have to consider as well. But both models are agreeing on the timing of that, which is good. Kind of helps with the confidence of the forecast. So I think the cold front is bearing down on Daytona as the race starts at 2 o'clock. And then by 6, notice our in-house model is a bit faster. It has the showers a little bit further east, closer to Daytona as the race is wrapping up. The American model on the left still has that front pretty far to the northwest. I think the in-house model's got it right. Not just because it's our model that we use here in-house at Queen City News, but I just think it's got the speed of the front right when it comes down to how fast we tend to see these fronts move to the southeast as we get through this weekend. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's going to be something that is going to be a close call. I think the race likely gets started, but I think then after the race gets started, it's going to be a concern of whether the race can finish on the green or whether the race is going to be ending under rainy conditions. I, for one, just want one race where we don't have to deal with rainy conditions. In 2020, we had to postpone the race to Monday. In 2021, NASCAR had to postpone the race again to Monday because of rainy conditions. In 2024, I believe it was postponed to Monday. It was, 2024 was postponed to Monday. In 2025, we had multiple red flags, which, if you're not a NASCAR fan, we had multiple stoppages in the race due to rainy conditions. So I'm hopeful that we don't have to deal with anything this year. But with a cold front approaching from the west, it's definitely going to be a race against Mother Nature, let alone a race against the other competitors out there on the racetrack during the Great American Race on Sunday. Should be a lot of fun to watch. Again, you can tune into that race on Queen City News here at 2:30. Be a lot of fun, and it should be a good time, especially if my boy Chase Elliott gets it done. We do want to give a shout out to Gabe McDonald, Case Funderburg, and also Joey Ellis, our Carolina Sports Live crew. They're going to be live down there all week long, getting you ready for the race and also covering the races as they go and making sure you have all the information you need there from Daytona. Again, I'm jealous of them, but I'm happy for them. They're covering things and they're doing a good job doing it. And again, we do have our Carolina Sports Live show here, original show as well, where they break down sports elements, not just the Panthers and the Hornets, but NASCAR as well. There's a NASCAR show as well that they talk about a lot of cool things with motorsports. So definitely a good way to get involved in some of our more of our original shows, not just Pinpoint Weather University, although I love having you guys here. I'm meteorologist Brandon Lawson, here with Pinpoint Weather University on Queen City News Plus. Again, shout out to our YouTube viewers that might be watching us, or if you're watching anywhere else, thank you so much, whether it's the Instagram reel, Facebook reel, wherever you might be seeing us. I really appreciate all the support that you guys continue to bring us, and we'll continue to bring you the updates on weather information, climate, and also bring you the education you need to help understand how it all comes together on Mother Earth. Again, as always, take care of yourself and each other. Navigate this earth together. We'll see you next time, my friends.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.